Hello and welcome to Moneycontrol. My guest today is somebody who started one of the foremost distilleries in the country. It's a distillery that come December releases its annual blend for Christmas. You may have guessed already, this is the chairperson of John Distilleries, Paul John. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Excellent. Can you start by maybe dispelling a confusion that I have around when John Distilleries was started? Was this 1992 or 1996?
Actually, I started in 1992, but it was under another name called National Distilleries. And it was a partnership firm. And then in 1996, I actually changed it into, a private limited company, and I renamed it as John Distilleries, private limited.
Excellent. And you grew up in Bangalore, but you set up your distillery in Goa. Why was that?
Well, I grew up in Bangalore and I started my alcohol business in Bangalore. It was, over a period of time that when I started expanding, I expanded to Goa also. And then when I decided to put up my single malt plant, Goa was the place that I picked because of the weather and the water and everything. So my largest operation is still in the state of Karnataka and we are headquartered at Bangalore.
Sorry, so when you say weather and water, etc., in Goa, can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, before I did my research to actually put up the malt plant, I went to Scotland. I did many trips, because we were all given to understand that you can only make single malt of, good quality whiskies in Scotland. So, I mean, there was a big confusion. Nobody had done it in India before. So, I did a lot of research, and then having looked at, and then I found out that, we could do, good quality single malts even in India. And then when I started searching for a location, of course, home base was Karnataka, Bangalore, and all those things. But then, end of the day, I found that the water table in Goa was very good. I loved the place because that's a tourist destination. I used to go there many years, and then of course the weather conditions also I thought was ideal because of the humidity and the monsoon. Of course, it's completely a different thought process from what happens in Scotland. But then I'm glad that I picked Goa because now we mature faster and we're able to get good quality alcohol at a lower aging than compared to what happens in the rest of the world.
So you started with blended whiskies, and you started selling your single malt in the UK first in 2012. Can you walk me through some of the early years? What was happening at John Distilleries then?
Yeah, so when I decided to start the alcohol business, my father was in trading of alcohol, and he had about 32 retail shops in an area called Coorg, and he was a wholesaler. So that gave me the background to be able to be confident that okay, I have some captive volumes that my dad will help me to sell. And so that was the initial start of making the cheaper brands for the domestic market in Karnataka. And I did that for many years, starting from 1992. And it was in 1995, 96 is when I decided to, upgrade the quality. And then I started the brand called Original Choice Whiskey at that time. And that's when, I put in some malt and did some packaging. And so basically that was the initial years. I did that for many years. I continued to make, the blended whiskies for the domestic market. I started expanding to the neighboring states, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and then Andhra, and then slowly started moving up to the neighboring states. And then it was only in around 2005, 6 is when I thought of putting up the plant, and then we started the manufacturing. In 2012, I decided to launch in Europe, and I picked a UK because that was the home base for the whiskey and specifically single malts to get recognition and get the awards. And that's how I launched only in UK first, and then after many other European countries, then I started. Then I decided to come back to India and launch it in India.
So are any of the blended whiskies that you started out with still available? Any brand names that we might still know today?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, our major business is in the domestic market. I have a brand called Original Choice Whiskey. which sells upwards of 20 million cases in a year. It comes under the one of the largest selling brands in the world. One of the first five largest selling brands in the world in terms of volume. And then we have a whole range of whiskies that we use mainly sell in India. From Moneycontrol whiskey, it goes up the ladder to Rule brandy, Rule whiskey, and then we have Big Banyan wines, and then we subsequently followed on to making the single malts, the Paul John series, and that we have about 12 variants, starting off with Nirvana, then the flagship, which is Berlin's edited and bold, followed by the Star Sign series. And then we have the Christmas edition that we launch every year for the last 5 years or so. We've been doing that, and then we have some special editions also that we launch. I also have an XO brandy that is distilled from grape spirit in a pot still and matured in French limousine casks, which is called the Paul John XO also.
Right. I have lots of questions about your Zodiac collection, which includes
Sure.
the Mithuna and the Kanya whiskey. But
Yeah.
before that, if you can tell me a little bit about why and when you decided to take private equity funding.
Well, as the business started growing and the demand for the single malts slowly started getting some clarity that there was a potential to sell good quality single malts internationally and domestic. It needed a lot of money because as it sits in the warehouse for more than 6 to 8 years before we actually are able to bottle it. So all these things drove me. I had a choice, either I stick to be 100% owner of a small operation, or dilute my stake to some extent and go for a bigger operation. So I picked the latter, and that's how I landed first, going in for a private equity investment. And then we had a very good relationship with Gaja Capital that had put in money, and it was a 6-year fund. And then by the time, after 6 years or closer towards the 6-year period, they had to exit, and that's when they sold their stake to Sazerac, and that is how now we've partnered with Sazerac, and that's how we have a partner in JDL now with Sazerac.
So, Sazerac, which is based in the US, you've mentioned before that it is interesting for you to have a strategic partner, somebody who's already in the alcohol space internationally. Can you tell me a little bit about what they've been able to bring to the table in so many years?
Well, it starts from definitely the financial support that came with that, taking stake in it. They are a very big player in the US. It also includes high-end, bourbons that they own. They own brands like Buffalo Trace, Pappy Van Winkle, just to name a few, E.H. Taylor, Eagle Rare, Blanton's, and things like that. So the knowledge that has come with their ability to manufacture bourbon, the storage, the ability to understand how storing of casks happen. So there is a lot of technology transfer that's happening between the two of us. We have a support from them as far as the distribution of our brands worldwide is concerned, because they are present in, I think, 100 and odd countries across the world. The brands are very well established. A lot of places where we've had issues with distributors, we've been able to take their support for that. We've also launched some of their products in India. For example, Fireball is a brand that is owned by them, which is a very successful brand worldwide. We do manufacture that in India, and we are distributing it in India now. Going forward, we are also working on bringing in a lot of their other international brands that are being sold abroad, which we would, whatever we can manufacture in India, we will do that. And of course, a lot of them bourbons that have to be bottled in origin. We already have some kind of an arrangement with them to market some of their products that they have launched in India, the bourbon whiskies. And going forward, we are looking forward to a lot more things to happen.
So you've also recently expanded your capacity at the Goa distillery. Can you tell me about some of what you're looking at? What was the investment like, and what is now the size of the distillery?
Yeah, we went from 2,000 liters to four, and then now we've gone to 12,000 liters a day. It's we are almost complete. We should be starting production, within the next week or so in the expanded capacity. And we've spent about 100 crores to do the expansion, and we need a lot more in terms of investment to store the whiskey that's going to come out from that, in terms of storage for barrel cost and warehousing. We need to build.
Excellent. Can you tell me a little bit about? So there's also conversation around launching a new rum. Is that right?
Yeah, we are on the works of launching a lot of new products, and a very aged sipping rum is on the work. So hopefully within the next few months, we should be able to launch the new premium sipping rum that we are working on.
Excellent. Tell me a little bit about your Mithuna whiskey, for example, which is part of the Zodiac range. Is priced at just over 20,000 rupees at the Delhi duty free. In Mumbai,
Yeah.
it goes for about 22,000 rupees. Can you tell me a little bit about your pricing strategy?
We have categories that range from roughly about 2,500 depending on the state and the taxes, which is Mithuna, and then we've got brands that start from that to 4,000, then 7,000, which is our Oloroso PX and things like that, and then the series are most are, I would say, one of the more premium segment products, uh, which we launched Kanya, which was also an award-winning. I think it was the best Asian whiskey single malt, and Kanya was awarded the third best whiskey in the world. It's basically a single malt matured in virgin oak. Typically, we mature most of our single malts with one used bourbon cask that we get from the US. But in this case, we've matured it in virgin oak. So basically, we've got new oak woods, oak casks, and matured it for about 6 years. And so, because of India, the humidity and the temperature, we lose a lot in terms of evaporation, which is in other words called the angel share. We lose anywhere between 10% to 12% on a year. But that's the flip side of it. But the better side of it is that we are able to get excellent quality products where we are competing with 28 years and 30-year-old whiskies and winning awards with about 6 to 8 years of maturation in India, and Mithuna is one of them.
You're in the US right now. Tell me a little bit about the reception of Indian whiskey abroad.
Well, in the beginning, when I launched, of course, it was a Herculean task. People would, wonder, they did not know, India made, single malts. They were still under the impression that we make all our whiskeys from molasses. So most of the questions should circle around that. How do you make, this thing, your single malts? Is it made out of molasses and things like that? But then, over a period of time, I think the manufacturers, not only me, but the rest of the single malt manufacturers in India, have proved the ability to produce high quality single malt whiskies, and now that's not the case anymore. Most of them have heard India as a significant producer of good quality single malts. A lot of them have tasted a lot of the single malts that come from India, including our brand, and then they are looking forward to what's the new stuff that you have. So I think it's been a fantastic journey, and the transition has been very encouraging.
Excellent. I mean, it's one of the ecosystems that is developing almost simultaneously, where different whiskey makers are sort of promoting each other to say Indian whiskey is worth looking at. So I'm going to throw you a little bit of a curveball. If you can recommend, barring Paul John, what Indian whiskey do you recommend to people, who ask you for a taste of Indian whiskey?
Well, I personally, I think Amrut is making some excellent quality single malts. I also believe that there is a company called Gyan Chand from Jammu. I think he's making some very good stuff. And I think there's a lot of good stuff that's coming out in the near future also.
Right. If we open this up to international whiskies as well, I mean, Diwali is coming up. If someone were to ask you what spirits they should be buying this year ahead of Diwali and the different parties that they're going to be throwing, what would your recommendations be? You can include a couple of Paul Johns in that.
Whiskies, of course, I mean, I would highly recommend, going in if they are single malt fans. See, the problem in India, I personally believe, is that we still have to educate the consumer to be able to drink single malt the way it should be had. Basically either preferably with no water added, but at best, if they find it, extremely pungent, probably a teaspoon for every peg. So, having said that. I would definitely. I am a non-peat fan, so I mean, I would definitely, if they are, starting off, then probably a billion should be good. But if they're a little more into single malts, then I would highly recommend one of our, cask finishes, the PX or the Oloroso. And then, of course, if they have budget is not an issue, then I think, Mithuna is something that I would highly recommend. But again, if they are peat fans, we have something called Bold, which I think is very good, which, they will like. That's something that they can buy. Then, of course, the other brands are there. They can, they will definitely, multiple options are there. They can pick up from any of those brands.
Yeah, internationally, are there any whiskies that you sort of think are interesting to look at right now?
Definitely. I mean, there are some fantastic whiskies that are coming out from really, unknown parts of the world. For example, there's a brand called Kavalan that is coming out from. I'm a big fan of that brand. They make fantastic stuff. Then, of course, the Japanese single malts are very good. But unfortunately, there's a lot of blended whiskies that are coming out from Japan. They're not very clear on their labeling, so a lot of people are getting fooled by blended whiskeys, thinking it's a single malt. But if you can get your hands on to some single malts from Japan, like Yamazaki, they make fantastic single malts. And I would have, but it's very very expensive. I mean, it's I would the the value for it I think is a little too much because the availability of the product is less, and as a result, the prices of it has gone up very high, and even availability also is not that easy to come by. But otherwise, I think I would highly recommend this brand, the other brand that I said, Kavalan. They make some excellent stuff.
Excellent. Christmas is around the corner. What can you tell me about the Christmas blend this year?
We always strive to make sure that we can keep that the touch of that Christmas element, the Christmas cake, the plum, the fruitiness. This year's Christmas edition is already ready, and shipments to the international market have already, started. I'm sure it's like usual. We always try to make it one of the best blends that we have, with that in mind, also the fruitiness and the Christmas feel in mind when we are making it. And this year's edition also is very good.
And what are the prices like? What range are you looking at?
It should be around the range of about 7,000 rupees per bottle, again, plus or minus 15%, depending on the state that it is being bought at. But should be around that price for a 750 ml bottle.
Can you tell me a little bit about the R&D that you do before you launch a new, whiskey or now that you're getting into rum? What is the process there?
Well, we take our business very seriously, and especially since I've lent my name onto the bottle. There's a lot of research before we do. As I said, I leave no stone unturned to make sure the entire process that we make, because it starts from the barley to the process of how we do it, to the maturation where the casks are kept. And then ultimately, how the cask is picked and how it is bottled. But yeah, at every stage, and there's a lot of discussion and quality parameters that we maintain to make sure. I mean, just to give you a classic example, typically after, for the fermentation, the fermentation can happen within 42 hours, but we leave it for about, from 72 to even 90 hours, so that, the yeast can impart all its flavors before it's actually distilled. Like that, even every cask that we pick from, international markets, we either Michael or myself goes there personally and make sure we inspect the casks, that there is no foul smell, no odor, and then we get the casks, and then we are monitoring it as it's maturing every year. We take samples to make sure that everything is going right. And then finally, of course, when we blend, we pick the cask from different places, because all our blends are 100% natural. We do not add any color, flavor, no nothing. So all that Michael can do is play with the different type of casks that we have, the location from where it is, and for how long it's been matured. So we take it very seriously, and then we do a lot of sampling, tasting, back and forth before we actually finalize on the final blend.
Excellent. You mentioned that your father was in the business, which gave you a little bit of confidence that, when you started out, that there would be a market for the whiskies that you were making. Can you tell me a little bit about when you thought you would sort of get into the business and what did you study?
Well, I had an inclination to do business from a very young age. Even when I was studying, I used to have, distribution for different brands of liquor. I would make sure that some brands were supplied, and I would take a commission even at a very young age. I used to accompany my dad during his trips to we were in country liquor business before, and that used to be like an auction every year. In every state and every district, there used to be auctions being held to have the right to sell, the country liquor in a particular area. So I would go with him in the early days, even when I was in school and in college. I mean, initially there was a lot of interest for me. So from the get go, I knew business was something that I wanted to start. And then, of course, after I got out from college, I first went into making of biscuits. I bought over a company that was actually closed, which was making biscuits, but that was a disaster. Lost all the money. I had to go into hiding. But it taught me a lot of stuff. What the real business world is. And then subsequently, I managed to get a license to manufacture alcohol. And then I put up the distillery, as I said, because my dad was in trading of alcohol, and he had a lot of retail shops. So I put up the distillery and started the brands, my own brands, to start off with the launch. And then we moved into Original Choice, and the history is now the single malt.
So, just some brass tacks. How many cases are you doing currently in a year across your different brands?
We will close this year with, I think, roughly somewhere around, more than 22 million cases.
Okay, and this is once the expansion is in swing, and you're making a lot more whiskey at your Goa distillery. What are you looking to hit? What is the projection?
That will take another 6 years for it to start coming out. So for the next 6 years, we have to sit with whatever is in the casks. So I think that's a long way off before we actually start. But yeah, if we've increased our production, then it's going to go up by 4 times. So maybe 300,000 or 500,000 cases per year after the deduction for evaporation losses in the single malt category is what we will be selling after 6 years from now.
So, what percentage of your business is domestic versus international market?
Well, for the single malt business, it's about, I would say, somewhere between 35% to 40% of the single malts that we sell is international sales, and the balance is domestic sales. But the cheaper brands, it's almost 95% is domestic sales, and it's only about 5% we sell abroad, because the cheaper brands, there's a lot of restrictions in most countries. They do not allow, because if it's not matured for more than 2 years, the classification to be called a whiskey in most countries is that it has to be matured for more than at least 2 years in casks. And most of the domestic brands that we sell are not matured, so we will not qualify to be called as whiskies in most of the countries. But in Africa, in the Gulf countries, we are, and to some extent we have some matured blended whiskies also, like for example to Japan and Australia and things like that. We are sending some blended whiskies also.
Any new launches in the pipeline?
I mean, there are a few brands that we are, looking at. Like I mentioned, the rum is on board, and then we have a Madeira finish, which is another, cask finish of, a sherry cask finish that we will be launching very soon.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time. This has been so wonderful to chat with you. I cannot wait for the Christmas blend to come out because every year you do something slightly different,
Yes,
even though they're all variations of the fruitcake that
yes,
we all know.
sure,
So, congratulations on that, and
definitely.
thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for having me, and it was a pleasure talking to you.